Your iPhone is 3 to 4 years old and it's time to replace it. So which one do you pick? The iPhone 13 or the 14? I decided to buy the iPhone 13 over the 14 for 3 main reasons. It saved me close to $200. The features of the iPhone 13 and 14 are almost identical with only a few minor differences that won't matter for most people. And finally, coming from an older iPhone, the iPhone XR, I knew I would get leaps of upgrades regardless of which phone I picked. So let me go into more details and break it down for you and convince you the iPhone 13 is the best bang for your buck until the fall of 2023 when the next generation of iPhones come out. First up, let's break down the pricing. So this confuses most people because carriers provide different promotions and sometimes it's worth it and sometimes it's not. The rule of thumb they like to go by is to think about how much the phone's gonna cost you, but also how much the plan's gonna cost you. And this is gonna vary greatly based on if you're on a family plan, which carriers you prefer, where you live. But I'm gonna break this down into how much I paid for my iPhone 13, and I bought mine full price on apple.com. So the iPhone 13 is $699 and the 14 is $100 more at $799. But that $100 difference can be actually a lot more if you factor in different promotions and discounts. And that's what I did. I bought my iPhone 13 on Black Friday, which gave me a $50 gift card from Apple. I also got a 6% cash back for my credit card, Capital One. So it actually ended up being closer to about a $200 difference between these two phones. And both Apple and Capital One excluded the iPhone 14 from these promos. Now, if you're wondering how I knew about that 6% cash back, there is a website called Cash Monitor that I highly recommend, especially when you're gonna buy something really expensive. It just lets you know the best cash back offers you can get. So the grand total was about $530 or so, and this is after the $150 trade-in I got from Apple for giving them my iPhone XR. And I think that's a pretty good deal, $530 for a phone that should last me 3 years or a little bit more. And I decided a year ago to go with a budget carrier, Mint Mobile, and it's worked fine for me. And I've been saving some extra dough on my phone plan by doing that. And I honestly have not seen that much of a difference between AT&T and Mint Mobile. I'm sure there are differences, but I'm working from home. I think if you want to save some extra money, try to find a budget carrier. Another way to save some money is to actually buy your phone off Amazon. If you type in iPhone 13 renewed premium, these are basically like new iPhones that have the same warranty that Apple would give you on a new phone, which is 1 year. They also have about a 90% or higher battery capacity and they work perfectly fine. They're backed by a big company. So if you want to save some extra money, look at Amazon. And if you have the Amazon credit card, that's going to be a 5% cash back for that phone as well. Another way to save some extra money is to trade your phone in not to Apple, but to a third-party company like Gazelle or Declutter, or actually sell it on eBay. It takes a little bit more effort and work, but you can probably get maybe $75, $80, maybe $90 more on those services versus just giving it to Apple. Okay, let's get into features and let me explain to you why the 13 is such a great deal in the current lineup of iPhones. So when it comes to features, the iPhone 13 excels where it needs to, which is the 3 main things most people care about when it comes to buying a new phone, which is how fast is the phone, does it take good photos, and does the battery last a full day? So when it comes to speed, the processor for the iPhone 13 and the 14 have the same chip, and that's the A15 Bonic. And this is actually the first time Apple has not given a speed bump to a newer phone. So this is probably the most compelling reason not to fall into the trap of buying the 14 because it's not gonna be any faster. Now the GPU is slightly better, but that's only gonna be for games and it's not gonna matter for most people. Now the camera is gonna be slightly better and the battery life is gonna be about an hour better for the iPhone 14, but again, it's not a compelling reason to spend the extra money on the iPhone 14. There are some other features to think about if you're contemplating the 14 or the 13. One is the car crash detection feature, and that is if you were in a car accident, the iPhone can detect that and call emergency services for you. And the other is their SOS feature. So if you're like in Alaska or in some remote area and there's no phone service, the phone can connect to satellites and get you help. Those are some great features, but they're not worth the extra money for the 14. Now there is a difference between Bluetooth between the 14 and the 13. The 14 has Bluetooth 5.3 and the iPhone 13 has the older 5.0. I had to really look this up and see what the difference was, and it does seem like with 5.3 you get a little bit more reliability when it comes to Bluetooth. Again, this is pretty minor, but something I wanted to point out as a difference. Now, there actually is a feature on the iPhone 13 that isn't on the 14, which is that the 13 has a physical SIM tray, and the 14, at least in the US, only has eSIM. And I use eSIM for my phone carrier, but if you're gonna travel with your phone internationally, or you just want another way to connect to a phone service, you do have that physical SIM tray. And the last reason why it's so compelling to buy an iPhone 13 is to think about the leaps of upgrades you're gonna get from where you're coming from. Most people are not gonna compare their iPhone 13 to the 14. They're gonna be comparing it to the phone they just had and they're upgrading from. So if you're coming from an older generation iPhone, like the 10R or the 8, you're gonna see big differences and you're not gonna think about some of the extra little bells and whistles that the 14 could have given you. Now, I held on to my iPhone 10R for 3 years and 9 months, and the only reason I decided to upgrade is the battery life was getting pretty bad. And I think most people probably make the decision of getting a new phone based on the battery life getting pretty crappy or the phone getting pretty slow. But I have to say, like, the iPhone 10R, like the 2018 phone, is not that slow. Like, it's not a fast phone anymore, but I wouldn't say the reason to purchase a new one was because of speed. And my advice is to hold on to your phone as long as possible and just save the money. I don't think people need to upgrade their iPhones every 2 years or even every 3 years. But when you do decide to upgrade phones, you will see big differences. And I just want to highlight some of those differences if you're coming from an older phone like I did with the iPhone 10R or even older. The first thing is that the screen is a lot better. So the newer iPhones have technology called OLED, and this just has sharper images, blacker blacks, and you will see the difference when you compare it to your older phone. Now, one of the most overhyped features of newer iPhones is 5G, and I think I kind of already knew that 5G was totally overhyped. I did do a test outside my apartment and I got some crazy speeds, but in the 2 weeks I've had this phone, I don't see any difference in terms of real world scenarios where the phone is faster. Now, one thing I was really excited about coming from the iPhone 10R is that the iPhone 13 is just slightly shorter, and this makes the world of difference for me. I always loved the iPhone 10R because of its great battery life. If you remember in 2018, people were shitting on Apple because the battery life on their phones were crappy. So the 10R was really a phone that was a little bit thicker and a little bit taller. Pocketability wise, like it's always been sort of an annoying phone to put in your pocket, especially if you were wearing jeans or shorts. The iPhone 13 is a little bit lighter. I love that it's just a bit shorter. It makes a little bit of a difference in terms of carrying it every day. The phone also just feels premium in my hand. I had the iPhone 12 Pro for a quick second, and I remember it feeling really nice in the hand. And I think the iPhone 13, even though it's not metal, it feels really nice. And I really like the squared off edges versus the round edges of the iPhone 10R. Now let's talk about the camera for the iPhone 13. Honestly, I'm not an expert, but if you're coming from an older iPhone like the iPhone 10R, you're gonna get a dual camera system, and you'll see a huge upgrade in photography. You can just see the difference in how big the camera lens is compared to my 10R here. Now here is a photo of the standard iPhone 13 lens and the same shot with the ultra wide lens. You can see how much more the image is capturing. I'm really excited to have more options here when it comes to photography. I know this is old news for some people, but this is a new feature for many of us coming from older iPhones. Now, the last feature I want to mention is MagSafe, and this is where you can put magnetic accessories on the back of your iPhone, and this is a feature that came with the iPhone 12, I believe. Now, I'm really interested in checking out some of the MagSafe wallets. I think that's a really cool idea. I've always wanted to ditch my wallet and just have my phone and my keys, but I've also never had a wallet case, so I'm thinking about doing the comparison between a MagSafe wallet and a traditional wallet case. Let me know if you want to see that comparison. At the end of the day, it's an iPhone, and they're all pretty good phones. Now, I do think that when you decide on getting a phone in general, it actually should be a very careful decision because you're going to be using it every single day. But I do think that the difference between some of the iPhone models is not that compelling, and how you can differentiate getting the 12 Pro over the 13 versus the 14, I think they're all sort of good phones. And once that honeymoon phase ends, the phone in your pocket will just be an iPhone, regardless of which version you picked. Anyways, go get the iPhone 13. it's a compelling buy. You'll have zero regrets. Thanks for watching, and if you want to watch a video on me talking about focus modes, which I think is a great iOS feature, check out this video.